Well, you know, I think God and Moses both just have enormous respect for each other.
Come live with me.
What gladiator has that same right spirit
Look, the judges are nodding. Even the Egyptian judge is impressed.
Until recently, you claimed that the Earth revolved around the sun.
Welcome to History Bites. I'm Rick Green. Now and then, I get angry at my bank over the service charges, or the bad service, or the drive-through ATM that doesn't serve me fries with my money. Well, in medieval Europe, long before there were banks, there was the Order of the Knights Templar. These military monks ran a lucrative sideline, providing financial services to nobles, bank service with a church service. One client, King Philip IV of France, was upset with this bank, mostly because it had more money than he did. Philip's warmongering had left his royal accounts dangerously empty, so he decided to pull a medieval heist by arresting the bankers. But what kind of trumped-up charges do you bring against a rich, powerful, secretive organization? How about Satanism? I mean, hey, I'm sure that's what they're doing at my bank. So let's channel surf back to 1307 for the takedown and trial of the Templars. Because if you're talking financial shenanigans and devil worship, that's TV.
Paris in October 1307, Friday the 13th. A day like any other day, unless you happen to be a French heretic. For members of a secret satanic society, Friday the 13th would be forever remembered as an unlucky day. At dawn, government agents moved in for a nationwide series of raids. By dusk, they had apprehended almost 2,000 enemies of the church. But these were no run-of-the-mill, foaming-at-the-mouth heretics. They were members of one of Europe's most venerable monastic orders, the fighting monks, known as the Templar Knights. Heresy is nothing new to the Christians. In the last century, the Europeans were shocked by the Cathars. Their infamous black masses and kiss of shame left a bad taste in everyone's mouths. But the heresy of the Templar Knights was worse. This group of former crusaders had degenerated from righteous soldiers into blasphemous bankers. The Templar Knights were founded 200 years ago in 1118. After Jerusalem was taken from the Muslims, this small group of knights became soldiers for a new generation, bodyguards for ordinary Christians making the long pilgrimage to the Holy Land.
And for centuries, they did God's will, guarding King Solomon's temple and killing Middle Eastern citizens. They did the work.
And they reaped the rewards, a guaranteed place in heaven should they die in battle. So these battling brothers caught the attention of the Pope. Impressed with their dedication, His Holiness heaped privileges on the order. But that didn't sit well with civil authorities, the nobility.
The Pope said that Templars don't have to pay taxes. Come on! Just because they've taken a vow of poverty? And he said the Templars only answer to him. I mean, that's a lot of power. And just handing it over to a group like that, it makes it very easy to abuse. And I should know about abuse of power. I'm the king. The Templars should have had to earn their power the hard way, like I did, by inheriting it through divine right from God himself.
And now, a few minutes with Andre Runard.
What has happened to the troubadours? A few years ago, they used to sing about lusty wenches and randy young men doing things so sinful and dirty you couldn't talk about it. You could only sing about it. Don't you miss the street corner musicians singing body ditties about women's bodies? I sure do. Lately, it seems all the troubadours sing about is the Virgin Mary. What is wrong with the world? Don't we hear enough songs about the Virgin Mary when we go to church 4 times a week?
Robert, who has begun mapping out the afterworld from hell to purgatory to heaven?
Dante?
Correct. Daniel, you can tell a lot about a man's family, history, and his beliefs by examining his what?
His nose?
No, the herald on his armor. Will, which countries have done the most to protect Jews and allow them to flourish?
Muslim countries?
Correct.
The Templars had moved from fighting to finance and were handling transfers of money between Europe and the Holy Land. The Templars opened branch offices in Europe, issuing travelers' checks to pilgrims, redeemable when they'd safely reached Jerusalem. If your checks were lost or stolen, the Templars would kill people to get them back for you. Between donations and service charges, these so-called poor fellow knights were becoming very wealthy.
But when a secret society of warrior banker monks gets too wealthy, medieval justice takes notice.
And so does the French king, who's driven his country to bankruptcy. It was one thing to accuse the Order of Knights Templar of being heretics. It was another to try and arrest them. French soldiers arranged a slew of co-raids, coordinated for dawn, October 13th.
We knew two things. One, the Templars were rich. Two, they were secretive. Okay, yeah, I knew a few other things about them, from having them around my palace all the time and so on, but the secrecy. I'd ask Jacques de Molay, their leader, "Hey, Jack, why all the hush-hush stuff? What are you guys up to?" And he'd say, "Nothing." Nothing, right. More like nothing God would approve of.
In an interview last year for the Pilgrimage Channel, top Templar Jacques de Molay tried to explain away his gang secrecy.
The whole secrecy thing, that's just business. I mean, we're defending Jerusalem against the Muslims. We can't afford to have secrets get out, and as far as wealthy goes, I'm not rich. I don't own anything, really. It all belongs to the Order. And even then, we only have the necessities. Stash of gold, several thousand estates, and Cyprus. But that's it.
And now, for those of you who love Bible stories acted out in a cycle of plays lasting 3 days, here's the mystery players with the mystery play they call the entire Old Testament in 482 parts.
And when these Virgin Mary songs are sung to the same tunes we used to use for the songs about Sally the Saucy Strumpet, somehow it seems to be sending the wrong message.
Now, a lot of the young players try to get out of quarterstaff training and move straight into a two-handed sword.
Okay, this is jousting, not jesting, kids. Come on, you think you're ready for battle. First time out, you don't make the cut, you end up getting cut. And you hate to see the young players getting cut.
But the French authorities faced a tough challenge.
My challenge as prosecutor was to convict the entire order of heresy. It wouldn't be enough to nail the top guys. We had to shut down their whole organization and confiscate everything they owned, so it couldn't be used for heretical purposes.
Prosecutor Nogaret was collecting evidence using a range of well-tested methods: speculation, conjecture, and gut feeling. But to arrest the Knights for heresy, Prosecutor Nogaret needed one more thing: a witness.
Bless you. Yes, it's coming back to me now. See, if you wanted to be initiated, like become a brother, you had to do all kinds of stuff. Deny Christ, spit on the cross, stomp on the cross. If you wanted in, you had to kiss butt, not in the figurative sense.
Robert, what is written along the edge of maps of the known world?
Here be dragons.
Correct. Daniel, in what city are nobles excluded from government?
Florence?
Correct. Will, which powerful military monastic order started out building hospitals?
The Hospitalers, or the Knights of St. John.
Correct. Lumpy, a man must be legally what when he beats his wife?
Angry.
Sober.
This was all French authorities needed. On Friday, the 13th of October, they launched Operation Goldmine, a series of synchronized strikes arresting every Templar in France and confiscating their property.
Neighbors of the Templars were shocked to learn of the monsters in their midst.
They seemed so nice and quiet. I think they had a vow of silence, except in battle. I mean, when they were yelling, you could hear them, but I'd seen them kill hundreds. We all had, stabbing them, but those were the infidels. And I just can't imagine them spitting on the crosses or all those other things that they're saying. It's appalling.
Coming up next, King Philip speeds up the wheels of justice as his torturers get cracking. The trial of the Knights Templar shook medieval Europe. Suddenly, and apparently without warning, King Philip of France accused one of the most venerable military and religious orders of Satanism and sodomy. Talk about your burning ring of fire. Under the medieval justice system, suspects were presumed guilty until proven otherwise. And while torture wasn't exactly the most reliable way of getting a confession, once you fessed up on the rack, you couldn't take it back.
Now that the Templars were imprisoned, they were quickly put on trial, but for Crown prosecutors to win the case, they needed confessions.
Extracting confessions from hundreds of accused criminals was a daunting task, especially tough knights. It required the combined efforts of dozens of inquisitors skilled in the delicate art of torture.
You've got to love it. You've got to be dedicated to torture and the king and God.
Luckily, we had the right people.
I've been in the rat racket for 18 years, and the truth is never black and white. More often, it's black and blue, and then a whole bunch of red.
The general rule in torture is apply as much pain as possible, just don't kill them. That's the executioner's job.
We were dealing with 40, 50-year-old men. By rights, they should have been dead a long time ago. And the fact that we only lost 38 of these heretics, to me, is a testament to the professionalism of the guys.
I've seen some cases where all of the accused end up dead. To me, that's just inexcusable. Unless you can come up with a plausible excuse.
But after intense questioning, almost all of them eventually spilled their guts. Still, the Templar Grand Master would prove to be a tough nut to crack.
I would never worship a carved demon head. That's idol worship. And the only thing I bow down before is a cross. Or even better, a gold one encrusted with precious stones.
But after weeks of increasingly heavy questioning, the Grand Master's resolve was stretched to the limit. At last, he snapped.
The charges against these military monks reads like a menu at a bordello. A bordello that has a lot of religious objects around for them to desecrate. Can this litany of licentiousness and vice be true? If so, why were the Templars not prosecuted earlier? Why were they regulars of the court of Philip the Fair? It raises disturbing questions about the fairness of Philip the Fair. Today, government's prosecuting attorneys released a taped confession by one of the Templars.
In this dramatic taped deposition, Demolay finally confessed to the charges of heresy.
I didn't do... No, I was not tortured. I
merely fell down the stairs.
I merely fell, what?
Down the stairs.
Down the stairs.
Into a fire.
Into a fire.
Catching
my codpiece.
On a protruding hook.
On a protruding hook.
Then I accidentally... Nailed myself. To a door.
To a door.
Soon, as the confessions were forthcoming, other eyewitnesses came forward with more damning evidence.
Ich habe einen Kuh mit Braun und Weiß Gesicht. Ich habe 3 Schweine mit rosa Gesicht. Mein Hund ist schwarz, aber Kopf ist weiß und grau.
It looked like an open and shut case. Until the Pope threatened to let these bad boys of biblical banking back onto the street.
The church and the nobles provided medieval Europe with law and order, knowledge, and economic structure. So the arrest and trial of the Knights Templar by the nobility must have shaken ordinary people's faith in the entire feudal system. What? Members of the church might be corrupt, or the nobles might be doing something dishonorable? It was a serf's nightmare. Then again, daily life was a serf's nightmare.
Statistically, very few criminals serve long jail sentences. The king has kept the prison population to a minimum through his policy of harsh and instant punishment. It's estimated that cutting off a thief's hand instead of sending him to jail for a year saves the government 14 coins. Turning to news from the world of medicine, mercury isn't just for leprosy anymore.
This is some nice twig right here. Yeah, now, so you want to make sure you make your roof out of thatch, not wood.
That's for sure. Using wood is way more dangerous.
Yeah, although if you talk to most serfs, they'll tell you that wood is stronger and more fire resistant.
Well, yeah, it is.
Okay, but most people say that thatch won't last as long because it gets filled with bugs and rats and birds' nests and stuff.
That is true, too.
Okay, then why is wood more dangerous, Mr. Smart Guy?
Because wood comes from trees.
Oh, yeah, right, I didn't know that.
Now, bear with me for a minute here, if you will, because you see, with everyone cutting down trees for firewood, where is the only place you can get good trees?
Oh, the Earl's land. What was I thinking?
What were you thinking? Because you know what? If you get caught hunting or cutting down trees on the Earl's land, he can kill you.
That's right, and then you won't need a wood roof over your head,
It's
folks.
not healthy.
Just 6 feet of dirt.
Yeah.
To the dismay of the French, Pope Clement halted the trials of the Knights Templar. Clement claimed King Philip had overstepped his jurisdiction. The Pope pointed out that the Templars answered only to him.
The Pope wanted to move the trial to papal court. Now, we were convinced that the Knights Templar were guilty, but for some reason His Holiness was still skeptical. So it was imperative that the Knights had their stories straight, so we could set the Pope straight. And for that, we needed a little confession coaching.
All right. You're battered. You're bruised. But you did it. You admitted you're guilty. Now, this afternoon's the big one. You gotta go out there, out in front of the Pope, and tell him what you done. Now, we come too far to lose this trial. I want to win this, and I know I can. Because you guys, you got heart. Well, not him. He doesn't have heart, but you guys got heart. All right, team, let's try this one more time. Who committed heresy? And what you gonna do? And for the love of God, if you gotta bleed, bleed away from the Pope, away!
The strategy worked. The Knights' testimony convinced the Pope there was heresy here, and the road to truth, with its torturous turns, was almost at an end.
The trial of the Knights Templar came at a time when the medieval church and medieval state were struggling over medieval power. King Philip of France had argued with popes before, and he wasn't squeamish about sending in his army to settle disputes. So, when the Pope stepped in to prevent a miscarriage of justice against the Templars, he had to be careful. Openly challenging Philip might put him one step closer to God. So instead of taking over the trial, the Pope extended the investigation of the Templars to all of Europe. Problem was, many of the French Templars had already confessed, wink, wink, crack, crack.
It should have been a clean sweep against organized heresy, but surprisingly, few Templars outside of France were ever found guilty.
Maybe other countries aren't as dedicated to rooting out devil worship. Maybe they don't have the kinds of advanced torture techniques we do. Or maybe the kings didn't realize how much money they could have if they just convicted them.
Yeah, we checked out the Templars in our country. They were on the up and up, you know. If you ask me, Philip just had a financial crisis. Tapped the Templars for the money. Oh, sort of thing happens, you know. You remember how a few years ago Philip was kind of short of cash, so we banished the Jews and confiscated all their property? Oh man, that's the way to do things. You know. Go after the Jews, not the Christians. You tell people it help me round up the Jews, and you get to keep some of their stuff. Boy, oh boy, everybody's out there helping round them up. It's win-win.
When no other Templars confessed, many of the French Templars began changing their stories. And in the eyes of medieval justice, this was a dangerous action.
For non-heretics like you and me, it's impossible to understand what's going on inside the mind of a heretic. They're in a constant state of denial, so sometimes if they're not getting their daily dose of torture, they'll relapse. One minute they'll be screaming out, "I'm a heretic!" Then we put out the fire on their feet and they take it all back. So we have to accept our limitations and send them to the Supreme Court in heaven, where God is judge. Excellent.
By the end of the trial, even the Templar Grand Master would be labeled a relapsed heretic. Molay publicly announced that he had done nothing wrong, except for lying on his earlier deposition. This left medieval justice with only one course of action. Molay was burned at the stake.
And authorities managed to make hundreds of knights see the errors of their ways. But medieval justice could not save them all. In failing to prevent some knights from relapsing into heresy, the system failed. I'm Bill Kurtis. Join me next time for another edition of Medieval Justice, where criminals are innocent until tortured guilty.
While most of the Templars got off lightly, 54 were burned at the stake. In the end, the order was disbanded. What happened to the hundreds of remaining Templars is a real mystery. Some folks claim they went on to found the Masons. Some say that they managed to make a large withdrawal, shipping out their fabled fortune just before the arrest. Rumors of 18 Templar ships escaping filled with gold, while Philip got almost nothing. Some theories claim the Templars were involved in founding Switzerland. The Templars' red cross on white is the reverse of the Swiss flag. Secret Swiss bank account, anyone? All we know for sure is that these mysterious fighting monks chose discretion over valor, and they faded into history. But for those Templars who were unjustly accused and unfairly tried, history bites.
Most of the Templars had one foot in the grave already, and here we were coating the other foot with hog fat and setting it on fire. When it comes to limbs, you only get 4 chances. And usually, by this point, their arms are broken from cracking them with the strappado, so you can't even work the upper body. But that confession's in there somewhere. Information wants to be free. We'll keep probing every part of them till we find it.